Hi everyone. My name's Aidan Clifford. I'm the new Microsoft Modern Workplace and Security Business Manager for APAC here at Pax8. Today I'm joined by James Davis, our fearless director from Academy, who you may be familiar with. The intention of our calls today is we're setting up a new series called the Modern Workmates here at Pax8 to basically discuss everything that's relevant for partners from a modern workplace and security perspective. My role here at Pax8 is to basically assist partners from a technical program, a marketing, sales, and operations perspective to help demystify basically the Microsoft program that you're more than familiar with and make sure we can cut through the noise and find what's most effective for you to utilize with your investment in Microsoft. Yeah, g'day, James. How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited. I'm excited for your new role, and I think it's going to help a lot of partners for us to project this sort of information, and your role specifically to help drive that. Uh, All our partners have M365 as their one of their main platforms that they're working with their clients, and from my experience, we're not really fully utilizing that workplace play, and I'm excited to talk to you about it.
Yeah, well, thanks very much for making the time, and always enjoy our catch ups. Yeah, I think for the purpose of the conversation today, I just had basically a list of questions that I'd love to run through, understand a bit more about your perspective in how you're working with partners from the academy side of things, and see basically how we can sort of help cut through the noise and see what are the new opportunities for partners, what may be some of the blockers that we can help them work through, and then yeah, ultimately keep catching up and talking about all of the updates from the Microsoft side and see where we can help our partners the most. I might just kick it off. It's all right, and feel free to reframe the question as it's a pretty broad one. But from the conversations that you're having with partners at the moment, from like a modern workplace security perspective, what do you see successful partners doing where other partners may be facing a few more challenges with the current stack?
I This is a fairly simple one to start with. Um, Apart from the partners having a strategy and a plan of how to leverage it, what it really boils down to is actually leveraging the business premium suite for a lot of partners. I'm still a bit surprised at how few MSPs actually go about this with the CSP. Like, if I look back on my time, I've been around Office 365 since it was BPOS. I think I think I was the first person to sell Office 365 in Canberra back in the day through
Oh wow.
Telstra. So I'm old around this stuff. But the reason why I throw back to that is most of us only moved people to 365 because SBS disappeared and we couldn't have on-prem email anymore. So we were driven by Microsoft to move to 365. We knew there was all these other capabilities. But if I look at that sort of transition period, Office 365 came out about 2012. It wasn't really till 2016 that it got popular, and then it got further driven to like really get embedded with COVID. So we've only really focused on the email component originally, and then the Teams and SharePoint stuff during COVID. So it's been more forced by a client demand for a lot of partners rather than us as the MSP and that sort of trusted advisor going to the clients and having these discussions about all these other things that are available in the suites. And that's where the business premium side comes in because it offers so much more value to tap into for a small increase for the client in terms of the monthly recurring spend on their licensing, but it opens up a lot of potential opportunity for an MSP to sell a lot of different professional services and tie into the cybersecurity bundles and that sort of thing as well for those ongoing recurring services.
Oh, fantastic. And do you find for the partners that have sort of embraced that business premium SKU rather than being reliant on the customers sort of dragging them into it, they've been able to structure their business and getting more revenue around, say, the pro services piece, and then also get subsequent additional solutions in there, setting them up for success with the modern threats on the cybersecurity landscape.
Yeah, so the MSPs that have gone with the Microsoft first security sort of strategy, it's very much initially driven by that conversation with the client proactively to go, well, if we increase you to business premium, we open up all these other things that we're able to drive you to sort of that sort of baseline Essential 8 security package without having to buy multiple different products. But the ones that do it well are then wrapping around compliance services and other activities that are doing it as well. So that drags that sort of first immediate need for cybersecurity, and then it opens up different opportunities from that for different sort of professional services.
Right, and then so then if I'm sort of understanding that correctly, through utilizing things like business premium or those consolidated suites, they're then able to sort of focus in, get some core services out of that, reduce the man hours perhaps that it takes to get that baseline, and then they can sort of extend from there. So perhaps overperforming from a smaller employee count than they would otherwise if they're utilizing unique solutions every time.
Yeah, so often, so let's take the cybersecurity out of it. Um, what most partners have done is they've shifted a lot of workload to SharePoint and Teams because that was we needed to adapt from the on-prem legacy stuff during COVID so people could work from home. But it was more done in a rush. So there's a lot of people now that are on the modern workplace that basically it was a lift and shift type project to move files into SharePoint. They've moved some communications, perhaps even extended it out to having the VoIP services and the calling go through Teams as well. So there's some consolidation there. A lot of it was done just as a lift and shift to replace the old school infrastructure. The opportunity then is to extend that out to provide better governance around it, better training and enablement, better setups of it. A lot of MSPs don't really know how to leverage SharePoint very well. They don't really know how to extend the use of Teams out into things like Planner and all those sort of auxiliary things that come included in the wider suite and platform. And that's, to me, where a lot of that opportunity is going to come from moving forward into the future. But for the moment, a lot of it's around security and data protection. It's still a lot. There's a lot of opportunity for MSPs to tap into the backup of data of Teams and SharePoint and Exchange Online as an example. But once they're in the platform, that's where it's going to start to open up in other modern workplace things that can generate a lot of recurring revenue, a lot of professional services revenue.
Yeah, awesome. I think you touched on a really good point around that adoption and change piece, to use the Microsoft language, from the advanced specialization of when you land the licenses, have you got a sustainable implementation within there so that they can then grow throughout the implementation of Teams or SharePoint or OneDrive or whatever implementation there is. I remember working with partners over the past few years, some of them specializing completely in that area just as a pro service. Do you see MSPs, have you seen successful implementations of those business units within MSPs, or do you usually see it's best to utilize a third party who specializes in that sort of framework?
I've seen MSPs that are investing in that sort of, let's call it digital transformation, use the buzzwords. I prefer to call it's more end user enablement and creating business outcomes. I am seeing MSP starting to get into that and being successful. There's been some mature MSPs that have realized actually we don't have the skills and capabilities, so we'll partner up with people to deliver that. But most MSPs aren't really looking at that. We're still in that probably maturity mode of the clients, our end users and clients don't know enough about the platform to request and drive opportunity, and the MSPs don't see enough of that to go and proactively talk and identify those opportunities with their clients. So we're still very stuck in the wider industry for MSPs. We're still very much seeing M365 as the infrastructure that we manage. It's not being seen as that sort of modern workplace, that platform that people go and do their jobs at. So there's still a bit of disconnect from the technology and management side to the actual practical applications and use of the software, because at the end of the day, MSPs have been built off the back of end user support and infrastructure management. It's not the application layer, but what really M365 is its application layer. We've removed all the infrastructure from a lot of those pieces, and MSPs are struggling to adapt to that sort of change in mindset.
Right, and then so through that change in the infrastructure management piece, hopefully there comes a change in the amount of service tickets or the amount of support that's required to sort of for the day-to-day management of that. Do you see the sort of repurposing of those resources from the back end to sort of more outbound activities like governance and those sort of things being a reasonable shift, or do you have a sort of perspective on that?
So it's not happening yet, but what a lot of MSPs are going through, a lot of the time they don't know it until I say it, is they are seeing a shift in the types of tickets they're getting, whether it's reduction or whether it's a change. So, or it could be both. So there is a reduction of like the back end higher complex tickets. I can talk to it. Your average MSP is typically going to get 70-75% of the tickets of what we'd class as level 1 tickets. It's those simple tickets that can be resolved. A lot of that's being automated. So that in itself is becoming a commodity. So as more and more people have moved to 365 and it is more stable, most of the time tickets now aren't fixing what's broken. It's generally user management. It's creating a new user, adding a person to a group, removing them when they're being exited. That's predominantly it. Taking out the cybersecurity compliance stuff, just our sort of traditional MSP work. That's what it's become. So as more people are automating those tasks and creating more, utilizing systems outside of 365 to do self-service and things like that, MSPs are starting to get that challenge in terms of the value that we used to provide in terms of our recurring services is disappearing in the eyes of clients because we're not getting all these issues. They're looking for other type of help and enablement rather than, well, 365 doesn't break that often, and when it does, the MSP can't fix it anyway. That value's quickly disappearing. But a lot of the MSPs aren't really seeing it and understanding it, and so they're not seeing the need to look at pivoting of where's next. And the ones that are typically just looking at it for the cybersecurity side, but not this sort of modern work place play that we're talking about.
Right, I guess, yeah, the pressing need is within that cybersecurity challenge at the moment. Obviously, it's a pretty dramatically changing landscape, but on both sides, on the productivity side and the security side, but obviously one's sort of hitting the belt a bit harder, a bit faster, so understand that urgency there. It kind of brings towards something I wanted to talk about, just the rate of change that we're seeing through a lens of Microsoft Modern Workplace and security. There's been some pretty exciting developments over the past few weeks from the release of a lot of Copilot features being integrated and Microsoft's AI solutions being brought into the productivity suite. Loop, which I've been playing around with over the past couple of weeks, has been pretty fun. But touching on your point of integrating that into the organization, integrating it into your day-to-day work and being effectively using it. You're probably not using the Copilot example because it's just recently to market. It's something that we'll be sharing some collateral on in the future. When those big changes come through from that productivity stack, do you have any insights on the partners that are more successfully embedding those within their organization and rolling out? Is it a case of eating your own dog food and then expanding, or how is the best approach there?
It absolutely is. It takes someone internally from the MSP to be keeping an eye on this and playing with it internally. Like Loop's a good example. There's very few MSPs that would know what that is, and wouldn't be able to see any type of opportunity from it. So, mate, you're the Modern Workplace business manager. Do you want to explain Loop as an example of something that's like sort of brand new that's come out?
Yeah, well, I'll definitely put something together that'll explain it a bit more comprehensively. But Loop at the moment is it seems to be an extension of the OneNote platform, embedding richer features within there. But what you can do is create collaborative elements within your loop or within your previously OneNote and bring that for people to collaborate on their favorite device or favorite platform. So you can create say a task sheet or a spreadsheet or any sort of function within Loop. Send that through to an email, send that through to a Teams chat or a Teams channel. There's probably a whole bunch of other examples that are missing off the top of my head. But the end user can then integrate and interact with those from their email, and it'll update live into your Loop sheet. So how I see it working effectively is reducing the time or the latency for manager approvals or for teammate collaboration to sort of input to projects that you're working on, or just even contributing. I just need a quick answer to fill this gap here, and then just finding them more quickly and updating that content from there. So yeah, I've really experienced it. It's only in public preview at the moment, so I think it's going to get a lot more rich and reliable from here. But I definitely was pretty excited from the update and getting to sample with it a little bit. Have you had a chance to play with it so far yourself?
Only little bits, but I can see the opportunity there. It's a bit. The reason why I got you to explain it and why I brought it up is most MSPs don't even know how to use something like Planner as an example. And the reason why these are such an opportune things, especially if you're starting to you want to convert people up to business premium and above, not just for cybersecurity, is there's an opportunity to reduce a lot of shadow IT that's hanging around. So often when we're going into working with clients, we're obviously always going, well, you need to spend more money, you need to spend more money. This is one of those times that you can look at when you're looking at the Microsoft platform in a more productivity side, there's a lot of opportunity to go, well, you might be using Monday.com, you might be using Miro, you might be using this, and this.
Yep.
You're spending X hundred of dollars per subscription per sort of software. You can turn around and go, well, actually, there's this planner capability, there's this. And either do that and convert them over and just let them go with it and let them sort themselves out. Or this is where you can go, well, actually, longer term, you're going to save on licensing, but let's do a professional services. We'll help you convert it over. We'll help you train your team so they know how to use it. And there you go. The extension of that is ongoing enablement and training with that. And you can quickly see how you can start from a saving money point into creating more revenue streams for you in the future. And it's a fairly compelling thing. So that sort of loop collaboration, you've got the Viva Insights, you've got Planner, you've got the bookings, you've got Find Time, you've got all these sort of productivity things that a lot of MSPs don't know. And so the ones may not be quite ready to productize it and commercialize it outside with their clients, but big step is, going back to sort of your question, is eat your own dog food internally. What can you use inside the Microsoft suite that you might already have a shadow, or you might already have another system for that there's equivalent sort of features that you can save yourself money, but then your team is using those products every day to run it. So you touched on OneNote as an example, and we've got Planner, we've got Loop. Running your meetings internally and having a channel inside Teams, and then using sort of some of these productivity apps, all of a sudden you don't have to spend money on some of the things that you might already have systems for. And you can start to see that. I know you could make money in selling people, here's how you run your meetings inside Teams and be able to collaborate easier, because that's what businesses are actually looking for. That's what people come to the academy for in terms of an MSP. Well, how do I run my businesses better, and how do I leverage the systems I've got, or what systems should I be using instead? It's the same sort of models out there, but it won't come unless you're spending the time playing and touching and feeling it.
Absolutely, and it'll come across not only from the way that you're able to support those solutions, but if you're trying to take your customers on the journey of this is their current state and this is how we can both improve your security and your productivity, the kind of the good cop bad cop of moving up that stack, then the more authentic it's going to be, and the more it's going to be able to cut through and get that approval at the end of the day. No, so I completely agree. Probably don't want to take up too much of your time this afternoon. But I did have one more question just to kind of bring together what we've been talking about and just trying to think of where we can end as a starting point as we kind of release, come together more often and do more of these videos. But what do you think would be probably the biggest short-term opportunity with everything that we've spoken about for partners from that modern workplace and security lens?
I think there's two that I can see, and and not just like I say, I know there's partners out there that are running with it and making good money. First one is that sort of cybersecurity play. Is if you're going that Microsoft first approach, there's all of that work for remediation. There's the uplift of licensing. There's the ongoing services. There's a lot of growth that you can generate from your business without straying too much outside of that sort of 365 realm. That's one. The other one for me that probably more longer term and more exciting in some ways. It's not quite on that productivity level. It's a bit more in the skills and capability sets for a lot of MSPs in that infrastructure management. Is Intune. A lot of partners are still very afraid of it, don't quite understand it, and I just see so many benefits from utilizing Intune to drive that sort of, it's almost bringing the enterprise SOE down into small business. And what a lot of people struggle with, because they don't quite understand Intune, is they think it's only for big companies, because we need to do this big professional services amount of project labor and stuff. Actually, it's not the case. There is tools to manage 365 tenancies, including Intune, that you can set static policies across multiple tenancies that can make this sort of the rollout and implementation of Intune a lot easier. And for me, if I was to go back into the MSP space, I'd enforce all my clients to have Intune, no matter what size, because there's so much benefit in being able to have that SOE, especially when you've got most people working on 365 or in cloud apps and that kind of thing, to make the deployment of new systems a lot faster and a lot more consistent, and manage those policies, as we don't have the on-prem AD, but utilizing Intune and Azure AD to manage modern group policies and things like that. We're not losing and going backwards from that sort of security and infrastructure management perspective, but we're able to leverage a more integrated way of doing it to drive efficiencies for us managing the infrastructure, but also gives a better client experience to our clients. Like, to me, nothing sexier than being able to just sell them a laptop and they can just sign into their AD account, and then it all just sets it all up for you. Like that's a gratifying experience for a client, and it shows that value of that more modern workplace approach, especially as more people are working remotely and not working in an office. It's getting more difficult to manage those kinds of things. So Intune, lots of professional services revenue to be made in that, and it just fits into that uplift of business premium. You can show immediate benefits from it, while still making some more professional services money over time.
Yeah, awesome. No, I think Intune's probably one of the unsung heroes of the past sort of post-COVID time, because it had a really big presence, but now there's been so much changing that we don't keep coming back to it and just keep mentioning it, and some people may be sort of going by the wayside and not integrating it. So there's definitely an opportunity lift the bar for everyone to be able to utilize it. And I think we've mentioned probably 10 or 12 different solutions that you can get out of Business Premium that people might be paying for and not necessarily taking advantage of, which is something I'll internalize and tie that into the resources and programs that we put together going forward. But yeah, no, I think that's probably a good place to wrap it up for the first one. Definitely keen to catch up again and do this again soon. But thanks very much for your time, James, and I'll chat to you soon.
Thanks for having me. I look forward to talking about this more in the future as well.
Awesome. Thanks, mate. Speak to you soon.